The NFL draft is always exciting, but for me, it's always exciting when it's the late draft picks because you just don't know who's gonna come out on top. And in this content, me and my guy Dylan Grouse, who I'm collaborating for a second time. Dylan, how's it going?
Great, fantastic. We're talking about in my opinion, the best sport out there is football. Cannot be more excited about this show.
Well, Dylan, the exciting part about the NFL draft is that we always have those underrated picks, those sleeper picks. And one of the greatest example we can say is Tom Brady, sixth round pick. He did play 4 years in college, and one of the things that we know about a lot of these athletes that they go on to win championships is that they put in years of experience in college, whether they started all 4 years or whether they, took them a time for them to get their reps in. But I'm gonna go straight to the fire and say I gotta go with my guy here. I am glad that the Giants selected him, and that is, in my opinion, potentially future star running back Cam Scatterbo. That dude is just unreal. It was a pleasure to see him in Arizona State Sun Devils. He had a terrific senior year there, and I just have a good feeling about him.
Yeah,
He
watching
gives me
Scotland
he gives
play.
me that sorry, he just gives me that
Yeah,
Marshall Lynch vibes in terms of he's hard to tackle. Well, go
yeah, and
ahead.
it's unfortunate that this draft was such a deep one, especially at that spot. Because I think Scotland in any other draft could have been a first, second, or third round pick, but because it was such a deep draft, he fell late. Now I do think that Scotabo has the potential to become the number one running back in New York this season. That backfield with him and Tracy is going to be a lethal one. I'm very excited on Scotabo. But let me tell you about a couple players who I think are going to be great. The first one I have is CJ West for the 49ers, fourth round draft pick out of Indiana. That dude's an absolute bust of a defensive tackle. If you watch his film, he's the type of guy who he's like a DJ Jones 2.0. He's a great run stopper. He's the type of dude who not a lot of guys can defend. He's such a big body, but he's also very physical and very athletic. I could see him starting for the Niners week 1. And another player I want to shed I think should not have been a late pick. I'm surprised he dropped is Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. That pick for the Steelers, he has a potential to be him and TJ Watt have the potential to become one of the best pass rushing duos in the NFL. I think Jack Sawyer, he was a big part of that Ohio State defense that won a national championship. He's just such a dynamic player, super athletic, is the type of guy who just never stops playing unless the whistle's blown. He's just absolutely a monster. He will create a lot of havoc for the Steelers. But yeah, those are the two guys in terms of draft picks I like. But there is one guy who was undrafted who got picked up after, and that's Nick Nash, the wide receiver out of San Jose State. Was not drafted only because he's a little bit on the older side. He's going to be 25 going into his rookie season. Only played wide receiver a couple years in college. He started off as a quarterback, but in his second full season as a wide receiver, he had 105 catches for over 1,300 yards, and get this, he led the entire FBS Division One in touchdowns. I know he played for a Group of Five school, San Jose State, so that may knock him a bit, but in terms of talent, he's got size, length, he's physical. He's athletic. He can make plays. He's a red zone guy. So he may be an undrafted player, but I think he's the type of guy who can make a roster definitely out of the gate. He can definitely be the type of guy who I see Atlanta having a game plan for. So I'm really excited to see him play and what he can do in the league.
Those are good names that you mentioned there. I definitely have CJ West as well on my list. I have a good feeling about him. He's a monster, he's tenacious. And the 49ers, one thing that we know about them is that they have a history of having great defense. So
Yep.
you have a guy like him there, and if he stays healthy, sky's the limit for him. But I'm very high on CJ West. Other names that I feel that they could stand out if they stay healthy and they get the reps in. Arian Smith, the wide receiver from Georgia, the Jets got him as the 110th pick overall pick, so I like him. I feel that he's very fast. I mean, watching him in Georgia, I mean, he was just tenacious. He caught 48 of his 68 passes last season, but he needs to stay healthy. That's one thing I can say about him. He needs to stay healthy. So,
Yep.
um, and also he needs to correct on not dropping so many passes. But other than that, I feel that those are things that he can improve.
Oh yeah.
But, they just got to take a chance on him. Another name, Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame linebacker, Jacksonville
Oh
Jaguars.
yeah.
You got yourself a gem right there. You got yourself a gem.
Yeah.
So I like him. And he was the heartbeat of the Irish defense. He was
Yeah.
the heartbeat of that team. So I hope that he brings that same tenacity, that same passion, that same grit to Jacksonville because Jacksonville, they need something. They need Trevor Lawrence, obviously he's still got a lot to prove, especially with that contract that the Jaguars gave him. But when you add a guy like him on defense, I'm like, okay,
Yep.
you're starting to put pieces in the puzzle. But Jacksonville, I really hope that this team can get back into their winning ways like they were in 2017, 2018, which they were one win away from going to the Super Bowl, but they dropped the ball in that championship game against the Patriots. But yeah, hopefully he can anchor that defense and, change the organization for the better.
Yeah, I love what Jacksonville's doing too, which is funny because they have an offensive coach. They're going back to their original days of we're a defensive team. You saw that 2017 team, their defense was the best part of that team. And I really like when teams like Jacksonville draft how they believe they should, meaning you build on the defensive side of the ball, everything will come after. Now, I do have a name I was thinking about. This is an unconventional name, but the kicker out of Arizona that the Ravens drafted, Tyler Loop. As soon as they picked him and they dropped Justin Tucker, I knew, okay, this guy's the real deal. I don't know if you saw the film. This guy can he was making 75-yard field goals on a routine basis at Arizona in warm-ups. This guy can kick. This guy's legit. I think he's going to be a long-term player in this league. Now, the one concern I have about him is he's not used to playing in a cold weather state. So when the games get a little cold, I wonder how he's going to do. But if you watch him kick, I mean, he's got a leg, and I think, Tucker was great, but I think having Loop as the kicker is going to be an easy transition. And John Harbaugh is a special teams guy. So he knows good special teams when he sees it. And I think that the Ravens are going to have they're going to have a lot more chances to win more games because Tucker had some trouble converting in 2024. So I think this year is going to be a much better year of special teams for them.
Yeah, when the Ravens got him, I knew that, okay, I feel that he's going to be the successor of Justin Tucker. And as we saw recently, the Ravens and Justin Tucker, they part ways.
Yep.
So this is going to be very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to see how well he will perform with the Ravens. Um, there was something else I wanted to say. Oh my God, it slipped my mind. Man, I had it, but yeah, he's definitely a hell of a stud. A hell
Yeah.
of a stud. Damn, there was something else, but it'll probably come back to me later. But is there anything else, any other players that you wanna highlight?
Let
Oh,
me.
I remember now. Sorry, I
Yeah.
remember. It came
You're
back
good.
to me
You're
now.
good.
In terms of that's going to be an interesting challenge. You mentioned the whole weather situation. It kind of reminded me of Jim Kelly because Jim Kelly, he played in Miami, and then when he really didn't want to come to Buffalo, and look how you know things have changed. Now he lives in Buffalo. He supports the Buffalo Bills. So as soon as you said that, I just thought about Jim Kelly
Oh
in that
yeah.
regard because there are players who they just love the warm weather and they just can't see themselves playing for an organization where it's mostly cold and hot, or is a little bit more cold and hot. But let's see, that's going to be an interesting challenge for him, whether he could deal with it or not. So that's something that we will have to wait and
Oh yeah.
see as time progresses.
I'm just excited to see how these players pan out because obviously the first round picks, you expect a lot out of them, and there's guys that don't succeed. But there's a lot of guys who get drafted late who end up being the best players in the league. George Kittle, Brady, Purdy, all those guys that got picked late ended up evolving into stars. So I'm excited to see how these players are able to respond to being drafted late. And I'm also excited to see kind of what they're able to do to earn a starting spot or earn a role right out of the gate. So it should be an interesting campaign. We got, I believe, mini camps and OTA starting up now before summer, and then we got training camp in July. So it's going to be a very fast-paced couple of months, but I'm just excited to see how this season unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. That's the exciting part about drafting players that you don't know who's gonna stand out. You don't know who's gonna flop. The Falcons, I felt that they did a solid job in terms of bolstering their defense with the draft picks that they got. The Cleveland Browns is gonna be an interesting situation because they drafted Dylan Gabriel, they drafted Shador Sanders. I'm so that's going to be a very interesting dynamic in terms of the battle of the quarterbacks, especially when preseason comes. So, and this is a Cleveland Browns team that they have gone like this, have taken a dip, especially when they made the postseason a few seasons ago. Myles Garrett, who, and as soon as you hear players saying, "Oh, that they want out or they demand a trade," I said, "There's no going back. There's no talking way out of that." But the fact that he decided to stay and sign the extension, I almost fell off the chair when I saw that headline.
I think that was a
And
leverage thing too. That's what I was saying. So I think that when players say that, a lot of the time they're trying to get more money out of the team. I don't think he
yeah,
actually wanted to leave. I think he just wanted to get compensated accordingly, especially knowing that the Browns were not going to be a contender anytime soon. I think he wanted to be compensated accordingly, and it worked. I mean, it worked for him. It worked for Max Crosby. It worked for all those guys that requested to get a trade. So I think, when I hear that, I usually think, okay, these guys are about to get signed to a big contract.
yeah, most cases are like that. But usually, as soon as a player says that demand a trade, most of the time they're mentally checked out.
Yep.
So, but I'm happy that he's staying with Cleveland. I mean, I like Myles Garrett. I feel that he's right for that organization, and that's another organization that I'm really pulling for them to thrive in the future. I'm the type of person I like to see small market teams win. I like to see the underdogs. I root for the underdogs. So let's see what happens with these draft picks and it should be a very fun and interesting preseason.
Oh yeah. Very excited for it.